On Primetime Politics tonight, Erin O'Toole is forced out as Conservative leader by his own caucus. How and why did it happen? And what's next for the party facing yet another leadership race? We'll hear from Erin O'Toole and Conservative MPs, and two prominent Conservative insiders will share their views on the dramatic turn of events and what happens next. And day 6 of the Ottawa protests. Anger and frustration are building as the core protest group vows to continue its occupation of the downtown core of the nation's capital. We'll get the view of the police response from this former senior Mountie. And we begin tonight with the end of the road for Conservative leader Erin O'Toole and a spotlight on the full-blown open conflict inside the Conservative Party. O'Toole's 18 months at the head of the party ended today when a majority of his caucus members voted him out in a secret ballot during a virtual caucus meeting. 73 of the 118 MPs who voted to replace O'Toole. That's a much higher number than the 35 MPs who called for the caucus vote this week. That is a vote of 62% of caucus members lined up against Erin O'Toole. Erin O'Toole's been under fire from within for months, accused of making up policy on his own, flip-flopping on carbon taxes and assault weapons, and accused of heavy-handed discipline against dissidents. An interim leader will be chosen when MPs meet this evening, and the party will be called upon to organize a leadership race once again, the third in 5 years. After the vote today, Erin O'Toole officially resigned as party leader and recorded a message on social media. Here's part of what he had to say with some parting advice to his party about the direction it needs to take.
This country needs a Conservative Party that is both an intellectual force and a governing force. Ideology without power is vanity. Seeking power without ideology is hubris. Canadians deserve a government that delivers exemplary management with a foundation based upon values and our decency as a country. What Canadians deserve from a Conservative Party is balance, ideas, and inspiration. Conservatism is about a vision of the country that makes us exceptional. It feeds the soul. It causes us to aspire to be better for our country, for our communities, for our families and neighbors, and for our role as a leader on the world stage. But it is just dreaming without the lever of power that comes with inspiring the country and earning the trust of its people.
Well, that was Erin O'Toole in a parting message today on social media after being ousted as leader by his own caucus. Here's some of the reaction from his caucus colleagues and also from the Prime Minister today.
This is not a good day for our movement. This is not a good day for Erin. I thank him for his many years of service, both to the movement, to the party. He's done his absolute best, and he deserves our respect. And I deeply respect him as a man. He's made a huge contribution to him. Rebecca, his whole family have sacrificed a lot to be here.
Divisions in the party. Is this worse than the divisions in the party?
We're a party of factions. This is a Conservative Party of Canada. We've been fighting like this for decades. And I come from one of the legacy parties. I'm probably like we've called myself a geriatric millennial. It's been like this for decades. This is the Conservative Party. We have heated debates. We disagree on things, then we come together, then we win elections.
Is there a problem that you have been fighting internally and not focused on the job of being the opposition? Like, how do you... You're on the third leader in as many years, I think. Like, where does the party go from here?
That'll be up to our members to decide at a convention.
But it's obvious by the vote that there was a lot of unhappiness.
Yeah, what happens now with your party now, Mr. Lambert? How can that be brought together? Do you think it can be brought together, or do you have a party that's divided?
It's going to be a bloody tough job. Bloody tough job.
What's the future of the party after this, decision?
I think it's a chance for a fresh start. I think that, we do need to rebuild and reflect on what went wrong in the last election, but I think people are optimistic that we can do that.
I'm looking forward to this fresh start that we now have. We're entering a new era for the Conservative Party, and I hope to play a role in
Which direction is that era taking you? Thank you very much. On this unity that you speak of, it's been years, though, and two leaders that have struggled, right, to unite two sort of sides of the party. What makes you think that the next one, whoever he or she may be, will succeed? And is it even possible at this point to reconcile this party?
Oh, I certainly believe that there's an opportunity to unite our party And clearly, we're going to have differences of opinion. Any political party will have differences of opinion. But I think it's the mark of a true leader how those differences are reconciled within a political environment.
I'm looking forward to our party and our caucus coming together again to be unified and focus on the goal of beating Justin Trudeau in the next election.
I think anytime you lose an election, especially when you're close, these kind of things, there's always people that start to want to look in different directions. And I understand that. But the important thing is now is that we as a party come together and we move forward. I mean, we were elected to hold the Liberals to account, to help people with their jobs and get the economy back on track. That's what we should be focused on.
The Conservative membership will quickly put their focus to the task at hand, which is selecting a new permanent leader. We've always had a party that's been led by our grassroots. They never shied away from taking their obligation seriously. So I think there'll be thanks for Mr. O'Toole's service. There'll be some who are disappointed, but everyone will quickly refocus to put their task to the new job, which is to select the next Prime Minister of Canada who can beat Justin Trudeau.
I'd like to begin by recognizing the member for Durham and thanking him for his service. There is a lot we don't agree on for the direction of this country, but he stepped up to serve his country, and I want to thank him for his sacrifice, and also particularly Rebecca, Molly, and Jack for being part of what is a very, very difficult life for even the most successful of us.
Well, let's bring in two well-known Conservative voices now in this country who've been watching this drama unfold. Lisa Raitt is with us again tonight. She's the former deputy leader of the party and sat in caucus with many of the MPs who've passed judgment on Erin O'Toole today. And Tim Powers is a Conservative commentator. Good to see you both. Thanks for being here. Lisa, let me start with you. What is your reaction to the vote today and just how decisive it was against the continued leadership of Erin O'Toole?
Really surprised about how decisive it was. I was in contact with a former colleague of mine, texting back and forth as it was unfolding. So I had a good idea of how the speeches were going, and I understood the amount of anger in the room. But, there was still support for Erin in the room. And when the vote came, though, it was clear that there wasn't that much support. I had thought that the room was equally divided, and at the very end, people just decided to vote with the folks who wanted to remove him from leader.
Tim, let me get your reaction to what we've seen unfold here today.
Well, I think there was a bloodlust for Erin O'Toole, as is obvious in terms of the results, but I think that's the wrong focus. But clearly, the caucus have chosen to go in a different direction, and they want a new leader. Will attest, and I think we widely agree on this. Conservative Party has a lot of other challenges: structural, narrative, brand, outreach. Erin O'Toole is the victim of maybe not getting enough done on that front. He's also the victim of expectations. Maybe he inflated them, maybe he didn't, that this party would win in 2021. And I feel for Mr. O'Toole. He's a very decent human being. It's a hard day for him and his family. And we are seeing again, Peter, that the worst job in Canadian politics is the leader of the opposition, particularly when that leader comes from the Conservative Party.
Yeah, and jobs are more fun when if you have the opportunity to move on and you quit them, as opposed to them quitting. So this is a tough day for Erin O'Toole. But Tim's touched on something here, Lisa. Yeah. What's happened here for a lot of observers, I think, has underscored that split in the Conservative Party over which direction the party should take, and maybe in terms of how much power a leader should have to try and take it in different directions. So I guess I'm wondering, does all of this, what we've seen today, does it risk tearing apart again? Ending the 20-year history of the party created, in fact, to bring all Conservatives together. Is that at stake here?
I don't think so. And I'm going to echo Tim. I should have said thank you to Erin for his work as well. It's very true. It is a really tough day. And I'm thinking about him and Rebecca and Molly and Jack and as they deal with what comes next. But listen, I don't see a split. I think what I see happening was Erin, he ran on a set of policies that he said he held true to, modified them once he won. And I think that was the problem for a lot of the members of Parliament who disagreed with the change and felt that the change came on without him working it through the membership, which is what the caucus normally expects. But here's the thing, going into this new leadership race, people are going to have to lead with policy. They're going to have to be brave on what they're talking about. And at that point, we'll understand what direction the party is going in. This can't be about who's your favorite face to go up against Justin Trudeau. It has to be rooted in policy this time.
Tim, is the promise of a Big Tent Conservative Party dead?
I don't think so, but I think Lisa and I are on the same song sheet on this. People are going to have to give a good sense of where they want the party to go and how people fit in through that policy, through those ideas. You only need to look at when Conservatives have won. The most recent, Mr. Harper, and prior to that, Mr. Mulroney. There was accommodation for Conservatives of all a different family and tribal background, and there were common values and common purposes. Lisa's right that maybe Erin didn't work enough through the party membership to do that, but it's concerning to me right now that the lens of the party by those who have sought and won the disposition of Erin seems to be narrower. Conservative Party doesn't win when it's narrow casted entirely to its base. Again, the last 3 elections are proof of that.
Right. So Lisa Raitt, I mean, would say that Erin O'Toole was actually, and you know, I've talked to some Conservative MPs who were put off by what they called Erin O'Toole's freelancing, but you know, he said. Stated emphatically and openly that he was trying to grow it beyond the normal base, trying to reach out to those people, and that seems to be, in a lot of ways, what's caused a lot of the pushback. So, you know, the focus is going to turn, as we've touched on pretty quickly, to a new leadership candidate, and a lot of people will be wondering tonight, well, who would want the job, and what do they have to know going in?
Well, there's going to be a lot of people lining up for the job. First of all, let's just get that straight. We don't worry about how many people are coming into the race. It's about how many people want to come into the race, quite frankly.
All right, Lisa's frozen there. So Tim, let me jump up to you to pick up on that, and we'll try and reestablish that link with Lisa Raitt. So Tim, weigh in on that. Why would somebody look at what's just happened to Erin O'Toole and say, okay, that's the job for me, and I know how to go about it differently?
Yeah, well, you would have to think twice about it. I think there will be a number of people who will put their hand up because it's the nature of politics, a competitive business, no matter how tough the opportunity is. I think the worst thing that could happen for the Conservative Party would the race would be limited to 1 or 2 candidates. That's not good. That's not helpful. But if you're going to put your hand up, you better understand you got a hell of a lot of work to do. You've got a caucus that is restless. You have a party that feels like it should have won the last 3 elections. And you do have a public that is looking for a different offering. And if you stay too focused, again, I'll say this, Peter, on the base and try and win the leadership, is what you often do, and then aren't able to convince the base to spread your wings further, Conservatives are going to find themselves in this cycle again of losing the next election.
All right, let's talk about some of the names. Who should we be thinking of? Some of them sort of are out there. Who should we be looking at as possible leadership candidates?
Well, we've already had Marilyn Gladu, a former brief leadership candidate. She had a brief tenure as in the last leadership race, saying she's putting her hand up. I think we'd all be surprised this time if Pierre Poilievre didn't enter the race. He's had some interesting positioning over the last couple of days on what he believes or doesn't believe about the Freedom Convoy. Does somebody like Michelle Rempel put her hand up? Other names I've heard, James Moore, who knows? Brad Wall, you know, that name is a bit like the Frank McKenna name in the Liberal Party. It always comes forward. Don't know how Mr. Wall's French is. Does Peter MacKay re-enter the race? I think there will be a lot of interest. Caroline Mulroney is another name. But again, we always start this way, Peter. We give you a list of names, and ultimately very few of those names enter, and there are surprises when it comes to who puts their name on the ballot.
Right, but can a prospective leader of this party who may share some of the same views as Erin O'Toole, can another Conservative leader win this party with a view to winning the country, coming in with a plan to introduce some sort of carbon taxation, to talk about assault rifles the way Erin O'Toole did, or is that going to be shut down by a strong wing of the party?
I hope not. I mean, look, there are more moderate, I would describe them, new MPs who are in the fold. You've got Eric Duncan from the Cornwall area, Melissa Lantsman, who someday could be a leadership candidate herself, maybe a leadership candidate, openly gay, more moderate on social issues. Raquel Dancho. You know, you have a young tier of conservatives who assumedly want to be here and want to win government, who are going to push back on some of the 2015, pre-2015 era policies. And that's healthy. The Conservatives just have to be really careful, having been through this, as you know, for the last 20 years, of carving themselves into bits so that the only beneficiary of all this is their political opponents.
All right. So, what are you watching for in the days ahead here? We'll find out about an interim leader. There'll be a shaking out period here as the party sort of regains its footing. It's always a traumatic time when you lose a leader, but when the leader is ousted by the party, perhaps even more so. What do you watch for?
Well, the initial positioning of people like Pierre Poilievre, Michelle Rempel, and others, who else may put up their hands. You'll remember last time, it was only such a brief period ago, there were people trying to get Jean Charest and others in as they're an interesting provincial candidate. So the phony war around candidacies I'll be watching for, the actual dates of when this will happen, how it will work. Mechanics, money, and date all matter because that will determine how seriously some people may consider entering this race. Because as Peter MacKay is discovering as a former frontrunner who didn't win, if you don't win, it still can cost you a hell of a lot of money and time to sort it out. So all of those things are important in determining what the field may look like and where this may go. And I do hope that the Conservative Party, the interim leader, whoever is chosen, do bring some peace, accord, and balance and good judgment to the next number of months ahead. They don't need to create branding problems. They need to provide the same sort of stability Rona Ambrose did in her term as interim leader for the Conservatives right now.
Yeah, is Rona Ambrose, do you think, is that someone who would look seriously at being pulled out of a life she's enjoying very much now to get back into all of this?
No, I'd be very surprised. I know Rona. I think she's, as you just said, very happy in her current world. I believe she thinks she's done her time. I'm sure she would be there to help whoever needed that help. But I don't necessarily see. I don't see Rona Ambrose entering the fold. And it would be good to have some of these younger candidates. Maybe there is a Melissa Lantsman or Raquel Dancho who put their hand up. I mean, they are the future of the party. Their voices should be heard in a leadership race like this one.
All right, Tim Powers. And before that, we had Lisa Raitt joining us. And Lisa's had a serious power issue, so we've lost contact with her. But thanks to her as well for joining us, at least for part of our discussion. Tim, good to talk to you. We'll talk again soon. Take care.
Thanks, Peter.
Well, there is building frustration and building anger as the anti-vaccine mandate protests enter a sixth day on Parliament Hill and across downtown Ottawa. The crowds are much smaller, down below 300 people according to police, but heavy vehicles and cars and pickup trucks are still blocking downtown streets. Businesses have closed their doors, horns have been blaring all night and all day, and residents of the city are fed up with the disruptions and the diesel fumes. Some residents have complained that their cars have been ticketed or towed, while protest vehicles have not been. Also complicating the issue, a major storm could dump 15 centimeters of snow on the capital overnight. And how will that get cleared up with trucks blocking the streets? The remaining protesters have vowed to stay on until all vaccine mandates are canceled, saying only a willingness by politicians to speak with them will clear the protest. The government rejected that demand again today. Here's how the issue featured in the daily question period in the House.
I think we've all heard the Prime Minister doesn't agree with the position of these protesters. I think that that's clear. But he has a responsibility as Prime Minister to help bring some resolution. And if they feel that they've at least been heard, they could maybe start to make some plans to go back home to their families. So what is his plan to bring some resolution to this impasse?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, from the beginning of this pandemic, we've been focused on encouraging Canadians to do the right things, to be there for their neighbours, for the frontline health workers, vulnerable people in their families. That means following public health advice. That means getting vaccinated. That means being there for each other as communities in respect and in support. And we have been extraordinarily engaged in encouraging people to continue to get vaccinated. Over 100,000 Canadians got their first doses just last week. There is more to do, and we will continue to listen to people who have concern as we work together.
The honourable member for...
Also today, Ottawa police provided another briefing amid growing demands to clear out the protesters. Police say a significant faction of the truck convoys from the United States and more trucks could be headed to Canada. Police say those protesters that do remain in Ottawa are highly volatile. The Ottawa police chief said there could be more charges against protesters, but he also raised the possibility that this protest may not be ended by the police.
We're looking at every single option, including military aid to civil power. I've had those discussions with mayor, council members, the board. There is a process. It's extremely well established, extremely well governed, and extremely rare. The only two occasions that I'm aware of in the last 100 years was in the Oka crisis and in the FLQ crisis. One in the 1960s or 70s and one in the 1990s. I have seen in my own policing time in the UN peacekeeping mission in Kosovo exactly how that looks when the military are mixed in with police. And there are some amazing capabilities that come with it, and there are some incredible risks that go with it as well. It is not a decision to be taken lightly. I'll say it again, as I said before, every option is being looked at. None of the options create a beautiful, elegant, simple, safe solution. They all come with massive risks. That option in particular would come with massive risks.
Well, let's bring in Pierre-Yves Bourduas. He's a public safety expert, a former deputy commissioner with the RCMP. Mr. Bourdois, thanks for your time today. Look, we're 6 days into this demonstration now, and the core group is much smaller of protesters, but still effectively blocking the roads, and police today saying they're highly volatile. What should happen next here?
Well, there's a whole list of steps that the Ottawa Police Service have attempted over the last 6 days, from negotiation to strategic arrest, and with specific cases. But the fact remains that this protest is turning into an occupation. And occupying downtown Ottawa with all the ramification on the citizens that have to put up with these blaring noise for hours on end is taking its toll on the locals, and it's seriously affecting businesses, it's affecting individuals, and elected officials are pressing law enforcement agencies to act. The problem with law enforcement in this particular, these sets of circumstances is the fact that the way I'm looking at this, the way I'm looking at the hardcore individuals that are there, you have to bear in mind that some of these people have lost their livelihood. They've lost their jobs. So they're frustrated, they're highly emotional, and they are, there's the unknown. The unknown is all the other people that are like mine but are not on the hill. So hence the reason why it's delicate. I know that Ottawa Police Service liaison personnel is trying their utmost to try to nudge these people into moving, but I suspect that for the hardcore, they will have to resort to other means.
Right. And in fact, the opposite is expected to happen. We heard from the briefing from the City of Ottawa today that they're expecting all kinds of more truckers and supporters and protesters to flood back into the city this coming weekend. We're going to see this repeated all over again. And what do you say to people who are looking at this and say, look, there's got to be something else to be done here? The chief of police in Ottawa today is saying, look, maybe this isn't no longer a thing that the police are capable of resolving. Maybe it's time to look at other options, such as the military. What do you think of that?
Well, it could be a solution that might bring some resolution to the tactical problem of Wellington and the core that could be addressed. But from experience, Peter, I can safely say that there will be also repercussion to this type of activities, i.e. displacement, in a sense that the protest might go somewhere else. just reflect on what's happening now in Alberta at Coutts. So hence the reason why, yes, there will be a tactical solution to do a resolution, but there needs to be also a dialogue that needs to happen with elected officials. But again, the hardcore, the people that have strong belief in relation to vaccination, it's going to be the challenge for not only the law enforcement official and professionals that are trying to manage, but also elected officials, because now it's clearly affecting both sides of the discourse, and the people that have lost their livelihood are clearly affected and are willing to push the envelope. That's the reason why the conversation needs to be elevated to the elected level, and sure that they might be able to find some type of resolutions.
Are you saying from a public security standpoint, it is time for federal politicians perhaps to go down and talk to these people?
Well, I'm not suggesting that, because I'd like to stay clear from all the political direction, but what I'm saying is that from a law enforcement perspective, the chief recognized that there are limits to what police agencies can do. Yes, there's a possibility to bring the armed forces, but it's a solution that might create other collateral problems. Hence the reason why maybe it's a discussion that needs to happen to a higher level. But of course, there's also, you look at what's happening in the U.S., even if the Canadian government would allow these truckers, to go without vaccines, well, they'll hit, like if they try to cross the border, what's going to happen on the U.S. side?
Yeah, the same rule applies in the U.S. But you mentioned the U.S. Look, police said today that a significant faction of the trucker convoy is from the United States, and perhaps money is flowing here to support it, and more truckers could be coming to Canada. What concerns you about that?
Well, it's escalation of this particular situation. And again, what I'm saying is the current situation is a powder keg. Let's not mince word here. What's happening in downtown Ottawa? These people are frustrated. The locals are frustrated. I even heard that there's maybe a counter protest happening over this coming weekend from the locals around the hill. So again, that's the reason why law enforcement agencies have to try to appease both sides. But again, there's a lot of tension. Nerves are frayed, and there needs to be discussion at other levels than solely managing the crisis as we're seeing it now.
All right. Pierre-Yves Bourduas, thanks so much for your perspective. Good to talk to you again, and we'll keep in touch. Thanks, sir.
Take good care, Peter.
And that's all the time we have for this edition of Primetime Politics on CPAC. I'm Peter Van Dusen, and from all of us here at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching. Until next time.